played the game for almost a decade. It is an incredible thing to watch an artist's journey through the card art. From the first few commissions peppered over a year of sets to seeing them have whole card cycles and products presenting their art. There's a reason that Alayna Danner has become one of the go-to artists for promo art and commissions that carry a lot of weight, and today we get to talk to her about her work. Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast. We talk about all things magic, flavour design and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
And today we've got a very special guest on the show. We have MTG artist Alayna Danner. Hey Alayna, how's it going? Good,
how are you guys doing?
Yeah, not too bad at all, not too bad.
Very
Freezing.
Well,
it is very cold. Yeah, it's very cold in the UK at the moment. This has become a bit of a tradition for us to ask our guests what the weather is like where they are. It is really cold over here. Whereabouts are you based?
I'm in Seattle, Washington.
Seattle,
in
Washington.
the United States, yeah.
Yeah, what's the weather over there doing?
It is raining, and it has rained for the past week nonstop.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what our winters are like. It rains all winter long, and then all summer it's perfect outside. It's 70 degrees and sunny all summer, and it's wonderful. But the winters kind of are a little dismal.
Oh, really? We don't even get the perfect summer part of it. I mean, I don't know about you, Nathan, but I feel like it's just raining all year round where we are.
I mean, I'm lucky I live in the countryside, so it's pretty. So at least I get that much. It's a bit muddier, but I mean, I'm happy with that rather than the sleek grey of London.
Yeah,
but
not been a very nice day.
No, it hasn't. No, it's Baltic, absolutely Baltic. But it's fine. That's what the winter's for. My mum does this. She comes in every day and she's like, how it's so cold outside. I'm like, Mum, it's the winter. Are you not aware of seasonal progression of temperature?
But we don't get the seasons. We don't get the seasons. All right, cool. Right, well, we've established that then. That's cool. And we wanted to talk to you for quite a while, Alayna, because your art is just exploding at the moment. It sort of seems like you've been in the sort of Magic game doing artwork for Magic specifically for about sort of 3 to 3.5 years now. Is that correct?
Yeah, and they actually work about a year ahead of time. So I've actually been working for about 4 years full time for them almost. Yeah,
for sure. Which I suppose in terms of Magic art, I mean, I don't know, you can correct me if this is wrong, but that sort of doesn't put you in the newbie territory. But you're definitely not sort of in the tooth old schooler. But it just seems that your artwork has been around forever and just on some really prominent cards as well. I'm just looking over your Scryfall sort of page with all your prints and all your artworks and everything, and it struck me, one of the first things I wanted to talk to you about is that, at least as far as we can see, because obviously commissions and the actual time that the cards come out differ, but the first 5 artworks that you did for Magic were Supreme Will, Bloodforged Battle Axe, Dragon Skull Summit, Path of Ancestry, and Riverwise Augur, all of which are completely different card types. So you've got 2 lands, you've got an artifact equipment, you've got an instant, and you've got a creature card in Riverwise Augur. And that just struck me very quickly, as you do a lot of landscapes for the game, you do a lot of land artwork, but you also seem to have this kind of balanced portfolio going on. And I just wanted to know if that was a conscious thing, or whether you feel that that's the case, or because a lot of artists do one or the other.
I'm pretty sure. So I've wanted to do Magic artwork for forever. I went to I graduated from high school in 2003 and went to art school, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do until I played Magic my freshman year summer of college, and I was just oh wow, this is what I want to do. I didn't know if I want to do video games or comics or whatever, but opening a pack of Magic cards and seeing the amazing illustrations was just this is what I want to be doing. And so after graduating from art school in 2008, every year I would try to meet with Wizards art directors at Gen Con, and I kind of got rejected a whole lot, which was perfectly fine because my art sucked. And they basically, told me, this is every year, this is what you need to work on. And every year I'd come back with a new portfolio to show them, hey, I'm trying. What do I need to do this year? Yeah. And I think they thought that I was ready, but they just wanted to make sure that I could, follow the rules and do what they wanted. So Supreme Will was my very first card, and the art description for that was super formulaic. It was here's style guide, and we want you to draw this god from this page holding this staff, from this other page of the style guide in this type of environment, from this other page with, destroying the landscape. And it was just super, do this exactly.
Same binary.
And so I think it was kind of a test to see, can she do exactly what we tell her to do? And that's what I think the other kind of pieces were too, to make sure, because I think landscapes have been my jam for a really long time, and I did a lot of landscapes for other games, so I don't think they were too worried about that. And in fact, Dragon Skull Summit, when Cynthia gave me that piece, it had, like I said, normally you get 5 weeks to do a magic piece, and for whatever reason that one was a super rush and they only had a week, and they're like, can you do this in a week? And it's
wow.
There's no way I'm saying no to that when I'd only done 4 magic cards, and it's here's a landscape which I really wanted to do, and I just won't do anything else for the next week except jam on this. So I think that's why everything was my first cards were really varied. It was all kind of like a test to see if I could do it, and then they were like, all right, now you can just do landscapes.
Sure. I mean,
That's
that
really
makes
funny.
a lot of sense. Because if you look at something like Bloodforged Battle Axe is a close up on the axe itself, but if you look at something like Supreme Will or Riverwise Augur, the backgrounds of these pieces, and even a lot of the foreground, are landscapes. Especially on something like Riverwise Augur, the jungle around the merfolk seems to be just as much as part of the composition as the character itself. So I guess that makes a lot of sense that landscapes are your main thing, because you've snuck them even into the pieces where they're not really landscapes at all, which is pretty cool.
I think it's funny that you mentioned the Dragon Skull Summit, because normally your landscape's really broad, you don't necessarily create artificial borders for yourself, and that's one of the few that I noticed that did. And if that's a matter of, okay, I've got 5 days to do this as opposed to 5 weeks, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It was, I'm trying to remember what the original art description was, but it was definitely kind of have it, because it's a mountain and a swamp, so make it really craggy. But yeah, it was definitely the first time I'd done either of those lands for Magic. So yeah, it was fun and hard.
But I mean, the sort of proof's in the pudding, though. The fact that your kind of breakout with those different things was all the landscapes, and the fact that that's the commissions that you got all the way after that. I'm just looking through your card image gallery. Something I've really noticed about a lot of the landscapes that you do is that you have this sort of sense, as Nathan said, of breadth and sort of grandness to your landscapes. Your forests never focus in on one tree. It's always one big sweeping landscape. And even for something like your guild kit lands, because you did 3 of the artworks for the Ravnica guild kits, you did the forest for the Selesnya set, and then the island and plains for the Azorius guild kit, which is the sweeping landscapes of Ravnica. Everything seems so huge in scale. It's very much like we spoke to Titus Lunter a few months ago,
He's
and
awesome.
his land, Titus is a really cool guy, and obviously a fantastic artist. And I'd say, even though your visual style in terms of your own flourishes that you put on are very different, he has that same sort of sense of scale as well. Is that always been the case? How did you find that style? When did that come to you?
I think just through drawing a lot. I didn't really get into doing landscapes until I started working on a game called Legend of the Five Rings.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, which is a very Japanese themed game, and I know this isn't Magic, but
Cool.
I hadn't really done a whole lot of landscapes, and then the art director wanted me to do a set of strongholds for each of the clans, and there are 9 clans in L5R. So I had to make all of them, and it's basically Japanese or Asian themed castles, but you have to make them all unique and fit with the different clans. And so they had me do that for 3 years in a row. So I did almost 30 of them, and it was super challenging, and I was like, the first set of them were so bad, but I think it was like a good trial by fire, where it was like, I'm trying to figure out how to make something like, this castle, this big part of this, identity of these clans, like look majestic and still look cool but unique. And so I think after 3 years of doing that and doing a bunch of other cards for the game really helped make me realize, or like inform how to work to make things look grand from a distance. And when I first started doing out like landscapes and those castles, I kind of wanted to zoom in and like just do the details of like one thing, like one tree, like you were saying. But
Mm.
after screwing it up so many times and making these horrible pictures, I think I just learned that if you want to show like majesty or, you know, a grand area, you really just gotta do it. You gotta zoom out and still put
Scale.
in all that detail, yeah, and put in just stuff at a huge scale to really make it read, which doing it a card size is also another challenge, but it's a lot of fun to do. It is so much fun to be working on these cards. So, especially like the Zorius, that landscape, the
Yeah.
plains and the island
Mm.
together, that was a blast. And that took me so long.
Oh, yeah, the amount of detail in it is crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just the amount of detail on like, all the windows and rooftops and like. So you play Magic, like you're a Magic player, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, like like Ravnica being like one of those fan favorite planes with such a striking look of like those
Oh my
Eastern
god.
European architectures. Like, is that a plane that you always wanted to like do art for? Because you haven't spent a lot of time on Ravnica by the looks of things, but you got to do those landscapes, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, Ravnica, like I started playing in 2003 and then I've played pretty casually until I don't know, maybe about 2010, and when I started dating my husband, and he's really into magic. And yeah, Ravnica is my favorite plane visually. It's so cool. And like there's so many of my very favorite magic art, like the Anthony Waters Ravnica pieces
Mm.
and um, my own, oh my god, I'm blanking on his name. My own personal playmat of Ravnica is like this amazing planes. It was from Dragon's Maze, and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. But yeah, my favorite plane and favorite art of magic is Ravnica. So when they asked me to work on Ravnica, I like lost my mind. Eric Deschamps, the Eric Deschamps
Eric
planes.
Deschamps.
Yes, that piece
Yeah.
is so freaking good.
Yeah, the one that's like top down almost.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
pretty. Absolutely stunning.
He was at Gen Con a couple of years ago. Sorry, and I
No,
got
no,
one of his
definitely.
playmats. I think his booth was like directly behind mine, and I just fangirled out at him over that piece and just lost my mind. So he's probably thinks I'm a real weirdo, but he wouldn't be wrong.
I mean, we've had a similar experience with Eric Shumps. He was at a Magic Fest London year before last, or the last Magic Fest that happened in the UK. before it stopped
2019.
happening. 2019, yeah. And I had him sign a bunch of my Planeswalkers that he did, like my Venser and my Elspeth and all that kind of thing. So yeah, he's a really cool
Awesome.
dude, but he must
Yeah.
he must do it all the time. That's so cool. But I mean, it's funny. I mean, before you came onto the call, me and Nathan were talking about like the philosophies of like what makes an island and what makes a forest, like visually speaking. And it's funny that we've just spent 20 minutes talking about like or 10 minutes rather, talking about your Ravnica lands, because it's actually your standard showdown promo lands that you did that also ended up in a commander deck or two in 2019, where it was your panorama shot where that got split up into all the different lands. So you managed to do like a plains, island, swamp, mountain, and a forest. And it
Yep.
was Nath, you were saying that you really appreciated the fact that the island was like an actual island.
Yep.
It wasn't like some other kind of like philosophical concept of what an island is. But
Sorry,
it was
it's a proper sore spot for me is when an island isn't an island. Like, I mean, obviously, we forgive Ravnica its sins for not being able to appropriately represent like land. But it's the same thing with your snow-covered island. The fact it has an island in it. It's the little things in life, that make me happy. It's squeezing in like some water into a mountain scene, so it isn't just a bunch of pointy rocks. That kind of thing is what I quite like. As you said, that breadth, that majesty. You can fit lots of details in when you do a big scene.
Yeah, and that was 100% like intentional with that panorama to make that island an actual almost tropical looking island, even
It is
though
very islandy, yeah.
even though like when you actually look at them all together, like the scale doesn't really work because of the island. Like everything else, lines up okay. Like the the forest and the plains, like those could exist, the way the space goes back, but that island would have to be so tiny. But but I did want it to have like an actual island, even if it didn't, make perfect,
Blame it on the
visual
fisheye.
sense.
It's fine. Fisheye lens makes everything look squiffy. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, just the way they scaled it when they put it on the cards. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Right.
mean, landscapes are like obviously the thing that you sort of really enjoy, but I suppose that's not really the only niche that you've found yourself in, because a lot of magic artists, and you can always tell like when artists have kind of really nestled into the game, because you start looking, you don't even need to look at the name at the bottom of the card. If it's a certain style of artwork or a certain kind of trope, I suppose you can go, I bet that's a this person's card or this person's card. And
Right.
there's a really weird niche. I say weird, it's not meant to be derogatory, but it's a really interesting niche where you seem to have found yourself in the position where anything that requires like a jeweled effect or like a diamond effect, you're smack bang the person that they go to seem to do it. Like in your portfolio alone, like you've got Jeweled Lotus, which recently came out, Diamond Mare, Prismite, and Diamond Knight all have this like crystalline effect.
Right.
Like how did that come about? How are you the person that they go to for this effect?
I have no idea how that started or why, but they first gave me Diamond Mare as one of my very first cards too. And it was a terrifying art description. It was like draw a horse that's living made out of diamonds. And are you guys familiar with the video game Borderlands at
Oh
all?
yes,
Oh yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, so like the art description they gave me was like almost verbatim the description that Handsome Jack gives at the beginning of Borderlands 2 of Butt Stallion. And like Butt Stallion is this living horse made out of diamonds because he's so rich. It's like something he bought and he like mocks you for it. And when I got that art description, I was like, oh my God, this is so awesome. I can't wait to do this. It was a kind of a nightmare to draw, but I think once I got it figured out, they were like, okay, we know that she can do this. So they just they gave me the Diamond Knight. And then like not long after that, I got Prismite. And I think it was Taylor gave me it, the art director. And he was like, I'm sorry, but I know you can do this.
Do another one, please.
Yeah. And at least like after that, after Prismite, they kind of didn't give me anything for a while until I got the Jeweled Lotus. And I was like, okay, that's fine. If you're going to, if you're gonna make me have to draw, like, so like not that it's a bad thing, but it does take a lot of time to draw all those facets and figure out how the light's working, which is fun, but I kind of prefer to draw landscapes. But if it's gonna end up with like powerhouse cards like Jeweled Lotus, that's okay. I will do more of that if you're listening, wizards.
you sort of ramp up the difficulty with each
Right.
one. I mean, at least from a sort of plebite perspective, like mine, I suppose, because Diamond Mare rather. I mean, it's a horse and it's a very sort of fancy, realistic horse, despite the fact that it's made of diamonds. But then you go on to with Prismite and Diamond Knight, and then Jeweled Lotus. Like you start adding in like crystalline spikes and all these different angles, and then obviously the Jeweled Lotus, being a Jeweled Lotus, requires it to be not these smooth edges and these smooth lines, but these incredibly like detailed like corners and angles. Like, I suppose, do you trying to ramp up your own ability, or is that just because that's what the piece requires?
Probably both, and I think I've just gotten a little bit better at doing it. And I've learned when they've given me these assignments, I'll go to my local like pawn store, and they make these little miniature like things made out of crystals, like little kind of like grandma knickknacks that are like, oh, here's a little kitty made out of crystal, and you can find them for like a couple dollars at a pawn store. And it sounds ridiculous because it is, but like when I got Diamond Mare and Prismite, like, and stuff like that, like I bought a couple of these little figurines, and then I went out to my driveway on a sunny day and like set them down on the ground and shot reference of these little like crystal figurines, and I'm sure my neighbors thought I was just absolutely insane, but but it really helped inform like how the light passes through and what it looks like in the shadows. So especially like with prismite, there you can see like in the shadow there's like almost a huge like shining light that's coming
It's
through
like a
because it
spectral
like
effect.
magnifies it. Yeah. So like when you actually set one of those little crystal things in the sun, that's what it does. So I think just getting more used to the how light works through different planes like that has helped make me a little bit better at doing it.
You can definitely see a jump between Prismite and Jeweled Lotus as well. I guess you might have gone and bought a nicer little gem thing. So like, the pinks and the yellows in it are fantastic. So you can kind of see, like going from the beginning, like obviously the mare has a little less like flourish to it, shall we say, even if there is the double rainbow snuck into the background, which I like. It's a fantastic touch. What does it mean though? What does it mean? But yeah, like it's coming out to Jeweled Lotus, especially having the word lotus in there must have been like great as well. And like you've done it such justice. Also, it's weird because it's one of the ones where you see more like architectural detail than in any of your other pieces as well, with all of the window effects in the background, which is a weird juxtaposition when you notice it.
Yeah, I wanted to make it look like it was definitely a very important thing in an important place. And I totally, if you look at Jeweled Lotus, it's on this purple pillow, and I totally bought that pillow at the pawn store, and my cats love it. Yeah, it's like a velvety kind of purple. And there's here in Seattle, there's University of Washington, and they have the coolest library ever. It looks like a cathedral, and I went in there with this pillow and with some of those figurines and shot reference of what the light was like in there with the different, stained glass windows in the background, like just to kind of reenact that. Here's something, well, it's not actually important, but like, here's something on a pillow that's, this crystalline thing in this really cool environment, just to see how it worked. And none of my reference really panned out, but the windows and the architecture in that building is so cool. So I wanted to kind of put those two things together.
Yeah, for sure. How does it like feel? Like Nathan's right, like to get a commission with like the word lotus attached to it, like did you expect the kind of sort of explosion of anticipation for this card that like the communities came out as like through players like being like, oh my look, like it's the Black Lotus of Commander? Like was there any of that kind of expectation or pressure on you when you were doing the art for it, or did you just kind of tune all that player nonsense out and just focus on the artwork itself?
I was freaking out like the whole time. Yeah. And and they actually commissioned that like 2 years ago. So
wow. Of course, yeah, Legends is like ages in the making, isn't it? That was a bit really annoying to be sat on as well, being like, there's a Lotus coming, there's a Lotus coming, there's a Lotus coming.
Right, yeah, to have like, because I can't talk about anything that isn't out yet, and I, it took so long that I was worried that it was going to get cut, that it was never going to actually get printed. So it was the Jeweled Lotus and the Hot Springs image. What did the final name of that end up being?
The Rejuvenating Springs.
That one. Yeah, that one took a really long time to come out too. So I was worried that those were not going to be printed, the Lotus especially. But I was definitely not prepared for the day it released when they showed it on the Twitch stream, how bonkers it was going to be. But
must also be really annoying to not be able to get hold of your own card without paying a lot of money to get hold of it.
Yeah, I went and bought a box of the Commander Legends, the super boosters, the collector boosters, and I didn't get anything out of that box.
You get your artist proofs though, surely?
Yes, whenever those, God, I hope they show up. Sometimes artist proofs don't show up, but if these do show up, that would be amazing. So yeah, fingers crossed.
I mean, this isn't the first time. I mean, I suppose if that was commissioned 2 years ago, it might have been the first time. But as a player seeing the cards come out, this is such a mind bend talking to artists about when they get commissioned for things. this isn't the first time you've kind of had a commission where the name of the card or the kind of card itself has some sort of significance outside of it being, playable. The thing that kind of struck me is that you had a whole secret lair to yourself with the Snowlands, right?
Yeah, that was really cool too.
Yeah, so like everyone sort of went like crazy over the fact that Seb McKinnon got his like Seb McKinnon art series secret lair, but you've had one yourself because you've got secret lair Snowlands. Like, what was the process doing the Snowlands for like a full set of like promo cards that you knew was going to come out?
So when they were assigned, secret layers weren't a thing yet. So I knew it was a set of Snowlands and that I kind of got to do whatever I wanted. And that was super cool. I didn't really know how it was going to work, where you could just buy them, alone as a secret layer. So I guess it's a good thing I didn't know, because then I probably would have been more nervous about working on them. So it was just a fun, like, I'm originally from the Midwest in America, and we get terrible winters, just tons of snow, super cold. Like, the year before we moved out to Seattle, like, in all of December, it didn't get above 0 degrees. And like, it was awful. So I don't miss the snow, but it's really cathartic and fun to draw. So it was, when I got that assignment, it was just a lot of fun to figure out how to do the different environments covered in snow. And most of them like are a reference to back in Wisconsin. So
Well, there was something really honest about them, like something that's very understated. That's quite nice, because obviously it's quite easy to like over stylize landscape and Magic sometimes. I feel like Basic's obviously a nice easy place to go, where you can kind of get away with things not having to be super overt or super stylized. But I like the fact you snuck in things like the owl, and again, the island being a natural island is obviously going to make me happy.
Yeah, they're not like hyper fantasy like landscapes, which is really cool. Which sometimes you need a break from that in Magic, especially if you want to have a deck which has a certain visual aesthetic to them. These kinds of lands are really cool for that, because you can slot them in anywhere. Or if you're doing something that is a bit more grounded, these artworks are really, really cool. The forest itself, I mean, this might be totally wrong, but it kind of reminds me a lot of the early John Avon forests that came out with those kinds of like rows of trees going into the background. Like, I mean, I take it that wasn't like an intentional sort of nod to those early artworks.
it was not, but I do love John Avon.
Yeah, like just rows of trees, like the tall straight trees as well, with the sort of depth in the background, which is like kind of a signature with you, especially with a lot of your forest artworks. There always seems to be a point of light in the sort of deep background that everything else kind of focuses in on, with this kind of haziness over the top of everything else, which is cool. One of the things that we really wanted to talk to you about, and ever since we saw these artworks, we were like, we absolutely have to find out like what the process was behind these, were the showcase artworks that you did for the Throne of Eldraine alternate art showcases. So you did 2 of them. You did Lonesome Unicorn and Realm Cloaked Giant. Like Realm Cloaked, I'm just going to say, like, this is me now, like, sort of fanboying. Realm Cloaked Giant is one of my favorite artworks in Magic, period. So like, that's a really yeah, absolutely. Like, I pulled when I opened up boosters, I pulled a foil regular version, which is still fantastic artwork, and I still went out and bought the alternate artwork to use in one of my Commander decks because I loved it so much.
Cool.
Yeah, I remember hitting you up on Twitter like quite a while ago, asking you about them, and you said that it was like quite a daunting thing for you to do. Like, is that right?
Yeah. That was terrifying. So the art description for those, that was Cynthia Shepard gave those out, and they were this is the first time, at least I'm pretty sure this is the first time they did like alternate art things for booster fun, kind of the collector booster things. And so I had, and that I got a couple assigned to me was just like kind of shocking. But the art description Cynthia gave said that the alt art adventures are stylized storybook versions of cards in the set with a unique storybook frame. Notably, storybook illustrations rely more on line and or flat color than rendering or realistic shading. some examples they attached of, some like classic kind of turn of the last century fantasy art. And the whole the big thing in that sentence to me was they rely more on line and or flat color than realistic or rendering and shading, which is crazy because that's all that I do. I don't work in line or flat color at all as well. Not since I was in like college and I was drawing like anime, like fan art and that kind of thing.
Sure.
So that was terrifying. And I did both of those in watercolor, and I hadn't worked in watercolor since college either, because I just from the that description of what they wanted and then the reference that they sent, like these were all illustrations that were done in watercolor. So I just figured it would be made more sense to just do it in watercolor than to do it digitally and then really try to make it look like it was watercolor. Like that would be, I think, even harder for me to try to figure out. So yeah, that was I think 2 years ago that I was working on that, and yeah, that was hard. Those were hard illustrations to do.
But they were they really hit their mark, especially for that showcase frame, because obviously the whole look of the set, and I mean, you would know better than we would, like what they were going for as an artistic direction. But the whole thing is meant to be that Germanic storybook, and then the kind of British Isles Arthurian legend look of everything, and the whole set as a whole, really hit the mark. I remember Nathan, we did a set review, and being like Englishmen, being like people from the area of the world which this is gonna evoke, and we were just absolutely blown away that for us this really felt like the kind of older May Queen style stories that we grew up with as part of our fairy tale background. And Realm Cloak Giant especially, the flat colors, but with all the really intricate and sort of deep detail in the giant's clothing, and then the roots of the trees going up to the branches. Yeah, exactly. It's flat color, but it's also got a whole bunch of depth that keeps you scanning the artwork for a long time, and then hitting up with that frame. Did you know what the frame was going to look like at all? Did they give you any idea what the frame was going to be?
Yeah, I have the email. I believe they attached a mock-up of, they attached a mock-up that's similar to that finalized frame that has kind of the bars on the inside with kind of ivy or kind of swirly kind of lines around it. So yeah, you definitely got an idea of what it was going to look like, and that helped a lot because you don't really realize it, but the artwork goes underneath the title at the top and all the way to the top. So I remember really having to go back in afterwards and kind of add more sky, because otherwise the giant's head was going to be behind the title at the top.
Ratio,
all right. Yeah, force them to crop it into where you wanted it to be.
Right. And I'm used to always working digitally, so I can just fix that super easily on the fly, but I've never finished a piece traditionally and then been like, oh crap,
lovely.
Yeah, so that was just another part. I'm so glad they turned out so cool. I really liked Eldraine as a set, flavor wise. It's so much fun.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's really fun, and that's not something that happens, and this was before the secret layers where they were, exploring different art styles on cards, so these were kind of, at least I'm not an art director, I'm not totally positive, but to me it seems like these were one of the first times where they're let's do not, super realistic rendered, let's do something else on Magic cards.
It's an interesting time as well, because I feel like Eldraine was almost like the mechanical successor to Lorwyn, and that specific art style for the showcases was almost like the artistic child to the way Nils Ham artwork and things like that. Obviously, you'd have been playing around Lorwyn time in those artworks, and for me, that stylization was what really drew me into the game. That's when I properly started collecting and playing avariciously. And cool. I feel like it was really nice to then go back and see some old. I don't think we'll get it as much. Obviously, Secret Layers open it up, but the showcase was a great way to go back to the Lorwyn days for me, of the the back in the old times.
Yeah, and Andy, you said you really liked the Realm Cloak Giant piece.
Oh yeah.
Well, I have last year for GP Portland, they used it for the playmat, and I didn't know they were going to do this, but they gave me an entire box of the playmats. So I have like a box of Realm Cloak Giant playmats at my house. So I can totally ship you one if you want.
Oh my gosh, you should not have said that. Absolutely. Cool. We will discuss
I would love
it.
to.
Wow, that's really kind of you. I don't know how Brexit's going to affect things like shipping or whatnot, but yeah, we can definitely talk about it.
Sweet.
For sure.
Yeah.
So like the that's not the only time though with that art that you've kind of gone back to using traditional. Am I right in thinking that your card art for the forest, the +1 jumpstart forest?
Yeah, that one is too.
Right, yeah. Can we talk about that one? I know that wasn't on our outline, but again, talking about. So I think I bugged you on Twitter a lot about your artwork. So I'm sorry if it's been incessant. But I think you said on there in an interaction we had that was color pencil. Is that right?
Yeah, I hate that picture so much.
Crazy. You hate it. Why do you hate it?
So it's the art description was like impossible, like literally impossible, and they actually apologized to me afterwards, because like usually when I get an art description, like like with the cat forest, it's like draw a lush forest with a panther or something. It's like, okay, cool, I can do that. Let me see if I can find this one, because it was just awful. It was like
esoteric kind of design. It was strange when you look at them next to the other 3 jumpstart lands. It's like, what has happened here?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, here's the art description. It says location, abstract, setting, non-specific, action. Show us a surreal landscape of an infinite chain of trees. The tips of one tree's branches forms the roots of the next as the pattern stretches out in all directions. It could be a tessellation or a fractal pattern. And that's it. And when they sent me that art description, I'm like, I does not compute. I don't know how to do this. Like,
This is because of Prismite. You did so well in Prismite. They're like, oh yeah, that, but trees.
Like,
but oh my god! But like the fact, like if you draw like trees, branches forming the roots of the next, then you just get like kind of a mess of like tangles with like rods of tree trunks sticking out, at least. And so I sent in, like I was saying, like they give me like the cat forest. It's like, okay, here's a sketch of a cat in a forest. I pretty much know what you're looking for. Here you go. And usually they're like, yep, looks great, keep going. With this one, I've sent in like 5 or 6 sketches where I was just like, I have no idea what you want. Here's like a fractally looking one. Here's like one that's like a top down of like just a whole like a pure forest of like pine trees that just goes on forever. And for no reason they picked this one, which is something, if you're an illustrator, you always know what happens is if you send in a bunch of thumbnails, they're always going to pick the one that you hate the most. So like, just leave that one out. And I made the mistake of, I was just like, no one will pick this one. And they did. So like, I don't know. I don't know why I wanted to do colored pencil on it, but I did. And it took a really long time. And it's the weirdest drawing I think ever. It's
such a striking forest. I think that I think you can get away with not liking it. Like, it stands out so much.
I don't know any other artwork in the game that looks quite like this. Like, it's very funny hearing like your sort of anguish at this artwork. I'm sitting here going, it's incredible, I can't make heads or tails of it, and you're going, I hate it, I can't make heads or tails of it.
It's weird. Like, I'm looking at it now and I just remember like, yeah, it's colored pencil and some watercolor for the background. It's in my closet in my house, and I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day.
Amazing.
I mean, I enjoyed it. I don't know, like, yeah, it's funny to hear you say that you hate it. That's so cool. I was more thinking like, oh, it'd be interesting hearing about how you're like you did it with colored pencil or whatever. And now we've got the dirt, we've got the scoop.
I like working in colored pencil. It's fun. Like it's something I used to do a lot more, but yeah, I think I learned my lesson, because it's like a 9x12, and it took so long, like, to do. So yeah,
there's a lot of line work in there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just, I mean, it's another like one of those iconic pieces, which is just seems to be every single like landscape, especially in your portfolio, just seems to be like piece after piece after piece, which is just like striking in one way or another. Like there's no blandness on in your like portfolio. Like everything seems to be hitting the mark. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, which is kind of very recent, at least for us, it might be decades old for you, it seems like, with the way that things come out, but that's your Flipland Kaldheim artworks that have come out. So yeah, they've come. It's Dark Boar Pathway and Slitherboar Pathway, and then Hengegate Pathway and Mistgate Pathway. Now, obviously, we need to be very specific that those are the cards that we're talking about, because at time of recording, Kaldheim spoilers are going to be next week, I believe, if you're listening to this
2 days.
in 2 days, in fact.
Oh, wow.
And obviously, not everything has been revealed, so we won't press you for like any deets on cards that have yet to be revealed. But for those ones specifically, I was about to say 2 artworks, because it's really 4.
Yeah.
It's 4 artworks. And the thing that really struck me about these, I mean, Nathan, like as an observer, you might agree or disagree, is that the rest of your landscapes, as we've sort of discussed, have been these big sweeping, evocative, like almost feelings of how a plane looks or how a certain landscape kind of, pans out. But these ones seem to be very specific locations. And although the scale is there, I mean, you've literally got characters for scale in some of these artworks, the narrative that they're talking of seems to be a lot more specific and a lot more direct. If you look at something like Mistgate Pathway, for example, which is the blue half of the Azorius Flipland, it's the one where you have the longboat in the meandering river with the runes in the sky, and then the runes are reflecting into the water. Like, it's such an incredible image, but I don't think you could do that on like any island, for example, even if it was like attached to a plane. Like, how did you approach those lands? Like, were you trying to be more specific, or is that just something that like we've made up as viewers of the artwork?
I think what might be happening is these lands are super vertical. So I think that has part of it too, because you're not able to see, it's not like a wide horizontal shot, right?
focus.
Like it's definitely like a super narrow up and down kind of piece.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because you don't see a lot of lands in this aspect ratio, so that has a huge like influence on the way that you read these pieces. That's really cool.
So I think for especially Dark Boar Pathway and Slitherboar Pathway, like those ones are like in like Dark Boar is in a cave and Slitherboar is in a giant tree trunk. So I think those are definitely like very specific places that you can't really show a wide area. So with the Mistgate and Hengegate though, like those are definitely more of a location in Kaldheim, like, more of a sweeping location. But yeah, I think if you wanted to make those horizontal, like if you cropped out the top and bottom, that it would definitely still not. I'd want to zoom out more. Like if they came to me and they're like, oh, we messed up, we want to make this piece horizontal instead of vertical, which would be a huge bummer. I would definitely like have to zoom out and just paint a whole lot more to the left and to the right. So I think that might be what it is.
That's so interesting. I hadn't even considered that's like I'm coming up with these big sort of philosophical like, it must be.
No, mate, it's the other way around. It's just the other way around.
Mate, you got it the wrong way around. Like, you just need to do it this way.
I mean, I guess does that have a big influence on? Because obviously you've done like Horizon Canopy and Razor Verge Thicket, Verdant Catacombs. Obviously the same thing, aspect ratio. Do you like working vertically compared to horizontally, or because I mean it does, as Andy said, it creates a very different style of image. I mean, and I think things like your Razor Verge Thicket are magnificent because you do have that specificity. That thing you said earlier, you don't like focusing on a specific object. But I think that's a good example of where it works really well. Do you like working vertically compared to the landscape? Like, I mean, I think, like, for example, Slitherboar Pathway might be one of the more, for me, it feels like one of the more detailed and vibrant pieces that you've done to date.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, thanks. That one was a lot of fun to draw, and that was another one that only had like 2 weeks to do. So that was a.
Well, keep working on a type. Keep working on a type. It's great, honestly.
That's so funny. When we spoke to Titus Lunter on our last interview, he said that for his Battlebond lands, he was jet lagged and working to a tight deadline, and those were the ones that actually, when you looked at them, he was like, "Oh, I quite like the way these have turned out." So yeah, maybe working on a tight
jet lagged more often.
Get jet lagged.
Yeah, though, like, and I'm sorry, I missed your original question of working vertically versus horizontally. I think I hadn't done a single vertical image until I think Verdant Catacombs was the first one, because that one was assigned a long, long time ago, and there was like a novelty, like that's fun. Although it kind of sucks that some of the art gets covered up by text.
This is my follow-up question of how much does it annoy you that you only get to see half the card? I'm glad you asked.
It's kind of a bummer, but the the novelty is kind of worn off, because like this past year, like I did those pathways for Call Time, and then 2 more for Zendikar that were vertical, and they're fun to do. And like it's not. Is it not in my Scryfall? I did a mountain in. Oh yeah, because it didn't actually get printed in paper. I did a mountain in Zendikar that's only an arena, and that was super fun to draw. But the downside is I can't make playmats out of them, because
Same with the Temple Garden as well was a Magic Online one. I'm looking at that going, I want that on paper, please.
Where is it?
Sorry,
Oh,
Magic, MTGO exclusives, I get it, but
Yeah.
Well, they're starting to catch up. I think that'll become less and less, because even the Seb McKinnon ones, which was the big one for Kumbaj Witches, everyone wanted Kumbaj Witches, and now that's a card that came out in the latest Commander Legends set, right? So,
where's my Seb McKinnon stasis? God damn it, give me my stasis.
You don't need any more. You don't need any more of those.
But it's beautiful. I've only got a white border one, and it makes too much salt. I need a nice Seb McKinnon one to soften the blow.
That didn't print in real life. That's not.
No.
It's only a Miko.
Yeah. Same with the not Everphone Chalice of the Void as well. All the fun cards. Yeah, they're only available online, annoyingly.
But we got Kumbaj Witches. So,
Yes, we did, little by little. Maybe one day.
Yeah, what a bummer. Those pieces are amazing.
Right? Yeah, it's a shame. Hey, hi, it's fine. We'll live with it.
They should do a secret layer of just, oops, we should have made these real cards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, give me my Urzatron as well, my fantasy Urzatron. Yeah. I've got this is a rant. I've got a whole rant on the back of my tongue.
It'll be another hour of the podcast. Just looking through, you've only done one token artwork, and that's a treasure token, which again, like, this is what I mean, like, very early on when I said that you sort of sneak the landscapes into the pieces which maybe don't necessarily like warrant them, or like you could have gotten away with not doing a landscape. Your treasure token is a landscape. It's just a landscape of gold with a chest in the foreground. I just think that's really cool.
There's almost even trees in the background. It's we can see what you're doing. We see what you're doing there.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a problem. I gotta put trees and mountains and everything.
So one of the things that we sort of talk to a lot of artists about is kind of just their general idea about where the game is now, or like fantasy art in general, like not even just Magic the Gathering, but fantasy art for gaming, or fantasy art, just in general, like where it is now, where you would like to see it go. Because obviously if you take a game like Magic, which has been around since the early 90s, like the art direction and the style and this whole kind of shift of different of like art styles is very apparent. Like you can see it there in front of you. How do you feel going into 2021 and beyond? I mean, obviously you're kind of working a couple of years ahead of everyone else, but
in the future,
in the future, like where do you want to see the fantasy art industry go? Is there anything you want to pick up? Is there anything you want to get back to? Like what's your feeling on it all?
Well, I think I really, like I said, I've been playing Magic for a long time, and I really like the realistic style that Magic has. And I know that a lot of people don't. But I think that's how you know when you're playing Magic versus a different game. If you open a pack of Magic cards, even if it didn't have any text or like the frame on it, like you're going to know it's Magic based on the quality of the art. But I do also really like the fact that they're having these secret layers, and I know people they're really divisive.
No, get out.
But I really like the ones that are like unique art styles, like the Seb McKinnon set and that heavy metal poster one. That was so cool. Like, I love that they're doing that. That they're exploring having artists that would otherwise never be on a Magic card now have their own way to express it, being on like, those badass heavy metal kind of style, or like that tattoo style one. It's, I think, broadening Magic to more people, even though it's only for a couple cards, but it's a good way to like be more inclusive in art style, because there's like Magic has been around forever, and Magic is really unique. Like in a video game, no one would ever, like playing Destiny 2 or something, no one would ever complain, "Oh, it's too realistic. This looks too good. Gosh, like where's some older style '90s mountain looking paintings in here?
Where's my 8-bit Destiny? God damn it!
Right, exactly. Like if you're into like NES, that's totally cool. You can go play it, but you're not going to complain about World of Warcraft or any like Call of Duty not looking like it was on Super Nintendo. So I think that as a Magic fan, as an artist, I'm happy that Magic has like such a high bar and such high quality art in the regular sets, and now that they're exploring having other types of art in secret layers is fantastic. And I don't want to sound like that I'm a super fan of everything they've done. I'm not, but in terms of like art and being an illustrator and working for all the other game companies before I worked for Magic, like they're actually great to work for. So
that was our biggest celebration of the year, was the artwork diversity. Like it's one of the things that's very clear, very apparent. So it's nice to hear that, especially from the inside, it's good to hear that. Yeah, if you're smiling as you speak of the art diversity as well, because
it's something that you say, Nathan, is that with this advent of like special arts and promo arts, that's more accessible, which is a great thing to like regular players and regular booster packs. Something that you say very often is, if everything's special, then nothing is. Like you need these like fancy realism artworks to be the core of your game. And I think it's something that we spoke to with Vorthos Mike in our very first interview episode that we ever did with someone, is that you need the center of the target to be the thing which everything kind of looks towards, so that on the outer edges you can have these special artworks to kind of add these little bits of flair. But I think I think now that more special arts are coming out, especially just within interactions that I have and Nathan has, I'm sure, with other Magic players, the more special arts that come out, I think the less and less people are going, oh, well, everything looks the same, it's all homogenized, and doing that whole reel of thinking, because I think they're starting to realize that it's not homogenized, and it doesn't all look the same. It just all looks like Magic.
This is an identity.
Yeah, exactly. So the sense of identity of how the game looks is only being increased and like rebolstered because of all these extra artworks. It's not being like diluted or over diversified. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to hear you sort of like say that you're happy with the look of Magic, as opposed to like you're right, there are a lot of people that would go, oh, it just all looks too much the same thing, and that I don't know if it quite does.
Maybe you're not looking hard enough.
right, and like that's the way Magic is, right? Like this is a game where you go to different planes and there are different characters that all exist but are drawn by completely different people. Like you got to know who, like Jace, by Tyler Jacobson versus Kieran Yanner, he's got to look like the same dude, right? Like that's their game, that's their world. So and art is a huge part of it, but art is defining the world. So to make everything look like it all fits together, it does all need to have some level of similarity. And that's why like we'll get a style guide at the beginning of every plane that we work on, so that way something looks like these lands look like Ravnica versus Kaldheim. Like they look very distinct and very different, and if they went with whatever artists, if they hired like everyone's cousins, who may not be as far in their artistic journey as they probably should be to be working on Magic, like then you wouldn't get that look and feel of Magic that makes Magic. So like I was saying, like it took me 8 years of going to Gen Con every single year and talking to the art directors, and they knew I wasn't ready, but they knew I'd get there someday. They just had to kick my ass a little bit and tell me how to get better, and that's just what you got to do to work for the man and make an awesome game like Magic.
For sure. Well, we don't have a huge amount of time left, but I just wanted to open up the floor to you. If there's anything that you kind of like wanted to talk about, or any topics that you wanted to touch on, like, yeah, now's the time.
Okay, great. So I just had one thing. It's kind of just a small thing, but I did a piece called Animal Sanctuary that came out in the last course set, and it's a pretty goofy piece, but it's got a whole bunch of different animals in it, and I think a couple people will play it in EDH. But Wizards is super cool. They let me draw both my cats and my dog in it, and so it's a really personal piece for me, and like it's like I was saying before, I have playmats from other artists and pieces on my walls that are all by other artists. But the only playmat that I will play with that has my own art is Animal Sanctuary, because it's got my boys on it, my 2 cats and dog. And about 2 weeks ago, my dog was diagnosed with cancer, and he passed away like 6 days later, and it really sucked because he was perfectly healthy and normal, and we would go on 3 to 6 mile hikes like every day. But in his honor, his name is Jake, and he's the black lab mix that's on Animal Sanctuary. And for all of January and February, any sales of Animal Sanctuary prints or playmats, I'm going to be donating to animal charities. So I just want to kind of get that word out that if anybody wanted to purchase one of those, like even like the shipping costs are all going to go to charity for Jake. So
yeah, that's really cool. That's a really good, like, sort of, when you sort of told me that was what you were gonna do with the sort of the charity work and the whole situation, I thought that was just such a cool idea, because it's an artwork that I remember when the artwork itself came out, everyone went nuts. Everyone absolutely loved it, because it's whimsical and it's a little bit goofy, but everyone loves animals, and your animals are super cute.
And again, it's honest, and it's honest, and it's real. It's one of those things. If it's a bit of real life on the card as well. So yeah, any support so that's a fantastic effort.
Yeah, for sure. And like any links or anything, we'll grab some links off you and we'll put it in. Keep updating as well these episode descriptions, as I know some things kind of take time. But yeah, for sure, we'll get the word out there and help you promote that, because that's super awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries at all.
That's Jake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, such a cool dog. Such a cool, like, the cats are really cool as well. Like, they're just looking straight at you out that artwork, and it's just.
And they're immortalized in a game as well, which is fantastic.
Like, people will be playing with this card like for as long as Magic's around, which I think is really cool. Like, because yourself and several other artists have been putting their animals in their work recently, and I just think it's a cool thing. And it's like those eggs that I love to find as well. Like, I love knowing, because you don't get told about it until someone on Twitter goes, "Did you know such and such put their like cat in a card?" And you're like, "Oh my gosh!" And you go and find it. Out their Twitter looking for that cat, and then you finally find it. So yeah, very very cool.
Yeah, Wizards is awesome for being told. Yeah, they did that. I got the idea from Chris Ron putting his cat in one of his pieces. So
yeah, it was a great year and a bit for artists to be able to get. It was like, go! If you've got anything cute, put it on the paper. We'll take it.
Yeah, and it is a really cool way to kind of immortalize them. Like, Jake only lived to be 8, but I'm pretty sure people will be playing with Animal Sanctuary cards for a lot longer than 8 years. So he'll be remembered forever in that way.
For sure. Absolutely. Well, where else can they find you then, Alayna, other than the links that we'll put in the description? Like, what's your social media links? Any kind of like websites or art depositories you want people to look you up on?
Oh, yeah. My main website is alayna.net, which is ALAYNA.net. And yeah, I have like a Twitter and a Facebook and a Pixiv and DeviantArt. Basically, when you're an illustrator, it's like, okay, I finished a piece. Now I have to upload it to 10 different places. But yeah, I'm on all of those things. So yeah.
Cool. We'll include links to those in the description below as well. You can find us guys on Twitter at mtflavouring, where we're talking about magic, flavour, lore, and art every single day, as well as a bunch of other nonsense that people generally don't pay attention to. You can send emails to mtflavouring@gmail.com. My Twitter is at AndyManface. Nathan's, yours is
at the Fox in the Moon.
All that remains for me to say is thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No problem. Thank you guys so much.
No. Pleasure is ours, honestly.
Yeah, we'll be looking for any more artworks coming out this year, and then probably tweeting at you, going like, "How long ago did you paint this? Was it 3 or 4 years ago?"
When's the next Mitchell's workshop coming out? How could you hold out on us?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, this next year is going to be pretty cool, so I'm excited.
Very cool. Well, we'll be looking out for it. Other than that, guys, all that remains for me to say is thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We'll see you soon.